All right, so today we are diving deep into deity connections, you know, connecting with deities, all that good stuff. And our listener has given us a ton of material to really get into, understanding these powerful beings, how to choose one that really vibes with you, and then actually, like, how to build a relationship.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most fascinating things that the source material touches on. It's not just like Deities 101. It really gets into some deeper aspects.
It's not just a list of names, right?
Exactly. What's interesting is just the sheer variety, right? I mean, we're not just talking about like picking a god from a list. You've got pantheons like the Greek, the Roman, Norse, Egyptian, Celtic, even animistic spirits, fae, celestial beings. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but that's what makes it so cool, right? Because it's not like everyone's drawn to the same energy.
Yeah.
It's about finding what clicks for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what the source emphasizes. Each deity has specific energies and attributes. Think of it like a divine skill set,
Oh, and I like that. So some excel at protection, others inspire creativity, some govern like specific aspects of nature. So it's about finding the right tool for the job.
Yeah.
But in this case, the job is your own. Spiritual growth or magical practice or whatever you're into.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to narrow this down?
Okay.
Because, I mean, come on, it's overwhelming.
It is. And the source mentioned things like intuition, research, meditation, even looking for signs. It's multi-pronged, but what I find most fascinating is the emphasis on listening to yourself. Like, what pantheon gives you goosebumps? What deity story makes you feel seen? Those are the things you shouldn't ignore.
It's like that spark of recognition, right? When you read something and you're like, oh, okay, this is speaking to me in a way that other things aren't.
Yeah.
And it's not always this big dramatic thing either, right?
Right.
The source gives this example of seeing crows everywhere as a potential sign of the Morrigan, which I love because I'm not saying every time a crow caws it's the Morrigan, but if you keep noticing them and you're drawn to Celtic deities, well, maybe it's worth looking into, right?
Absolutely. It's that combination of external signs and internal resonance. And, the source makes it clear this isn't a one-time decision either. Like, your relationship with a deity can evolve over time, just like any relationship.
Oh, that's a good point. So it's not like you just pick one and then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
There's room for growth and change.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so let's say you've got a good feeling about a certain deity. What are the actual steps to building that connection? I mean, you can't just send them a friend request, right?
Definitely not. Yeah, the source really dives into practices like creating an altar, making offerings, meditation, and dream work. It's about actively engaging with the energy of that deity.
Okay, so you're putting in the effort.
Yeah. And here's where it gets interesting. Offerings don't have to be these extravagant things. It's the thought behind it that matters.
So it's not like you need to sacrifice a goat every Tuesday.
Not unless you really feel called to. But seriously, the source uses this example of a handwritten letter. Imagine pouring your heart out to that deity, expressing your gratitude, asking for guidance. That's an offering in itself.
That's so true. It's so much more personal. It's like I'd be way more touched by a heartfelt letter than a random bouquet of flowers that someone just grabbed at the grocery store,
Exactly. It's about showing you care in a way that's genuine and meaningful. And that leads to this idea of unique devotion. Your relationship with a deity is going to be different from anyone else's.
Oh, that's actually really exciting. It's not about following this rigid set of rules. It's about finding what feels authentic to you.
Right. And the source gives some really cool examples. Like, if you connect with a deity of poetry, maybe you start writing poems dedicated to them. Or if you're drawn to a nature deity, you might volunteer for an environmental cause. It's about weaving that connection into your life in a way that feels natural and fulfilling.
It's like, I don't know, this is blowing my mind a little. Because it's like, I love to bake, so maybe baking bread for a hearth deity would be a way to show my devotion.
It very well could be. And that ties into another important point the source emphasizes, consistency. It's not about doing one grand gesture and forgetting about it. It's about nurturing that connection over time, just like you would with a friend or a loved one.
Yeah, like any relationship, it takes effort.
Right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you're building this relationship. You're finding ways to express your devotion. What about the magical side of things? Because our listener sources definitely mention magic and rituals, right?
Absolutely. And this is where things get particularly interesting. Deities can be invoked for specific purposes in spell work, like you're assembling your divine dream team.
Okay, I love that. So it's like, okay, I need help with this love spell. Who better to call on than Aphrodite? She practically wrote the book on attraction.
Right.
But that raises a good point. What if your chosen deity doesn't traditionally specialize in the type of magic you're doing?
Right.
Does that limit your ability to work together?
That's a great question. And it really gets at the heart of how personal these connections are.
Right. Because I'm picturing this deity being like, look, I'm great with blacksmithing,
Yeah.
but love spells, that's not really my forte.
Well, the source doesn't specifically address that scenario.
Okay, so maybe that's something to consider as you're getting to know a deity. Like, hey, are you cool with me calling on you for this kind of work? Or would you prefer I stick to, crafting amazing swords?
Exactly. It's all about communication and respect, just like in any relationship.
Right, of course. Okay, so we've got invocation, where you're calling on a deity for a specific purpose. What other ways are there to work with them magically?
Well, the source also mentions tailoring your spell work to align with the deity's energy. So, for example, if you're seeking protection, invoking Odin, the Norse god of wisdom and war, might be a powerful way to tap into his strength and strategic thinking.
Okay, so it's not just about asking for their help. It's about working with their energy in a way that's aligned with their strengths and your intentions.
Exactly. And it's important to note that this is a nuanced practice.
Right. It's not just like, Odin, protect me, and boom, you're invincible.
Definitely not. There's a lot of research, preparation, and respect involved.
Okay, good to know. So what else is in our listeners' source material? I feel like we've only just scratched the surface here.
Well, the source also touches on seasonal ceremonies, which are tied to the wheel of the year. So it's about honoring deities at specific times that align with their energies or the cycles of nature.
Okay, so like a big cosmic party.
It can be. For example, you might celebrate Brigid, the Celtic goddess of hearth and healing, at Imbolc, the festival of spring, or honor Cernunnos, the horned god of the forest, at Yule, the winter solstice.
So it's not just a personal connection, there's also a communal aspect to this.
Exactly. It's about creating a shared experience of reverence and devotion. Imagine gathering with others who connect with the same deity, sharing stories, rituals, offerings. It adds a whole other dimension to the practice.
Oh, I love that. But, all this talk of deity connections and magic, it can be a little intimidating, to be honest. Like, what if you're not sure you're ready for all this?
That's a totally valid feeling, and it's something the source addresses directly. It emphasizes the importance of knowing when to step back.
So it's okay to say like, hey, this is a little too much for me right now.
Absolutely. Remember, you are not obligated to serve any deity. Free will is paramount in this process.
Okay, that's a huge relief to hear. Because it's easy to get swept up in the excitement.
Yeah.
And forget that you actually have a choice.
It is, and the source reminds us that if you feel drained, fearful, or simply not ready, it's perfectly okay to pause and reevaluate.
Think about honoring your own boundaries. Right?
Exactly. And that leads us to another crucial point the source makes about deity impersonators.
Ooh, this is where things get a little spooky.
It's more about being discerning than spooky. The source warns that not every spiritual being that presents itself as a deity is actually what it seems.
So like tricksters pretending to be gods.
Essentially. It emphasizes the need for protection rituals, divination tools, and most importantly, listening to your gut feeling. If something feels wrong, trust that instinct.
Okay, so it's not just about being open and receptive. It's also about being cautious and protective of your own energy.
Exactly. And this ties into another point made in the source about respecting cultural boundaries. Some deities belong to closed religions or indigenous practices, where working with them requires specific initiations or permissions.
Right. It's not just about picking and choosing, whoever you think sounds cool. There's a responsibility to understand the context and traditions associated with a particular deity.
Exactly. It's about approaching this whole process with respect and humility, not just diving in without doing your homework.
So to sum it all up, connecting with a deity can be an incredible journey, but it's not something to be taken lightly.
Absolutely. It requires patience, respect, a willingness to learn, and most importantly, an open heart.
And a healthy dose of intuition. Don't forget that gut feeling.
Right. That inner voice is your best guide. Now, your source also delves into some fascinating ways to work with deities in magic and ritual.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. I'm super curious about how that actually works.
Well, one method mentioned is invocation. This involves calling upon a deity during a spell or ritual to seek their guidance or support.
So you'd actually speak their name and ask for their help.
Exactly. The source gives the example of invoking Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft, by chanting something like, "Hecate, queen of witches, guide me with your wisdom and light this path."
Whoa, okay, that's powerful. But it also makes me wonder, what if you, like, mess up the words? Or what if you accidentally invoke the wrong deity? Is that a thing?
That's a great question, and it speaks to the need for preparation and intentionality in your practice.
Right, you don't want to accidentally summon, like, a god of mischief when you're trying to do a healing spell.
Exactly. The source stresses the importance of research and understanding the proper protocols for working with a particular deity.
Okay, so research is key. Back to invocation for a sec. It's about calling on a deity for support during a spell.
Yeah.
What other ways can you work with them magically?
Well, the source also mentions tailoring your spell work to align with specific deities. For example, if you're doing a love spell, you might call upon Aphrodite to amplify your intentions.
That makes sense. It's like if you're baking a cake. You wouldn't ask a blacksmith for help, right? You'd go to someone who knows about baking.
Yeah. Exactly. And similarly, if you're seeking protection, you might invoke Odin or Athena for strength and courage.
Okay, this is starting to click for me. It's like you're not just asking for a deity's help. You're working with their energy in a way that's aligned with their strengths and your intentions.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes that this is a nuanced practice that requires careful consideration and respect.
Right. It's not just about throwing a deity's name into a spell and hoping for the best.
Definitely not. There's a lot of research, preparation, and intentionality involved.
Okay, so we've got invocation, we've got aligning your spell work with specific deities. What else is in our listeners' source material about working with deities magically?
Well, your source also mentions the concept of receiving messages or guidance from deities.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. How does that work? Do they just, like, send you a text?
Not quite. The source talks about things like dreams, synchronicities, and even direct visions.
Whoa, that's intense. So you could actually see a deity in a dream or have a vision of them.
It's possible, but the source also cautions against taking every dream or strange coincidence as a divine message. It's about developing your discernment and learning to distinguish between your own thoughts and feelings and those that might be coming from a deity.
Okay, so it's not just about being open to receiving messages. It's also about being critical and not jumping to conclusions.
Exactly. And this is where things like divination can come in handy. The source mentions tools like tarot cards, runes, and pendulums as ways to help clarify messages and receive guidance.
So it's like having a cosmic hotline to the divine, but with a healthy dose of skepticism thrown in.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between openness and discernment.
This is also fascinating, but I have to admit, it is a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, and it's important to remember that this is a lifelong journey, not a destination. The key is to start small and follow what resonates with you most deeply.
Right. No need to rush into anything or try to do everything at once. Baby steps.
Right. Exactly. And here's where the source offers some really helpful advice. It suggests beginning by simply exploring different pantheons and deities, reading their myths, and paying attention to which ones pique your interest.
So like dual spiritual window shopping.
Exactly. See what sparks your curiosity, what feels familiar, what draws you in. Trust your intuition and allow yourself to be guided by that inner compass.
Okay, that feels a lot more manageable, like a treasure hunt, exploring all these different divine possibilities.
It is. And remember, this is about building a relationship. And relationships take time to develop. Be patient with yourself in the process.
I love that. No pressure, just curiosity and a willingness to explore.
Exactly. And who knows what amazing discoveries await you on this journey.
This is so exciting. I can't wait to see where this path leads.
It's an adventure waiting to unfold.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. Like, a lot. From the sheer variety of deities that are out there to, how to approach them respectfully, even dipping our toes into, like, the magic that can unfold. It's clear that this is a path with a lot of depth, but it's also super personal, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, what resonates for one person might not for another. And that's okay. Your source really drives home this point, that there's no one right way to connect with a deity. It's about finding what feels authentic and fulfilling for you.
That's such a good point. So there's no pressure to, like, fit into some predefined box.
Nope.
That's good to hear, because honestly, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
With all this amazing info. Like, where do you even start?
Well, your sources offer some great advice for that, too. They suggest focusing on what genuinely excites you. So, like, does a particular pantheon's mythology grab your attention? Is there a deity whose story you just keep coming back to? Start there. Dive deep into their myths, research their attributes, see what kind of offerings they traditionally receive. It's like a detective game, but for your soul.
Oh, I love that analogy. Yeah, it takes the pressure off. and makes it feel more like an adventure. Because really, that's what this is, right? It's a journey of discovery. And who knows what amazing things you might find along the way.
Exactly. And remember, this is about building a relationship. Relationships take time. They require effort. They ebb and flow. So be patient with yourself and with the deity that you're connecting with. Allow that connection to unfold organically.
I love that. Okay, so to wrap things up for our listener, it seems like connecting with a deity, it can be this deeply personal and potentially transformative experience. It's about forging a bond with the divine,
Yeah.
one that can enrich your life in countless ways.
It really can. And it's not about like rigid rules or dogma. It's about finding what resonates with you, what speaks to your soul.
It's like a choose-your-own adventure
Yeah.
in the realm of the divine. So for our listener out there, now that they have all this amazing information, what would you say is the most important thing to remember as they embark on this journey?
I'd say the most important thing is to approach this with an open heart, a curious mind, and a healthy dose of respect. Remember, deities are powerful beings, and it's essential to treat them with reverence.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget about that intuition. That inner voice is your best guide. Like if something feels off, trust your gut.
Absolutely. Discernment is crucial. But also, don't be afraid to experiment, to explore different practices, and to discover what feels most authentic to you.
It's all about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where your energy aligns with that of the deity you're connecting with.
Exactly. It's a dance of energy and intention.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've explored like the vast world of deities, discussed how to connect with them respectfully, even touched on like the magic that can unfold. It's clear that this is a path rich with potential and meaning.
It is. And I really hope our listener feels inspired to continue exploring this fascinating world.
Me too. So to our listener out there, now that you have all this amazing information, what will your first step be? What feels most exciting to you? Let that be your guide as you begin this incredible journey of connecting with the divine.
Happy exploring.